Friday evening, Felix sent me a text. "Thanks for the education, but I'm taking the real business with me." Monday morning, he was sobbing on my voicemail. "Please, we can work something out." Those 72 hours changed everything. My name is Daniel Kane. I'm 45 years old, and until that Friday afternoon, I thought I had built something lasting with my business partner, Felix Morrison. Kane and Morrison Consulting had been our baby for 7 years, growing from a two-man operation in Austin to a respected strategic consulting firm with 23 employees and clients across Texas. Felix and I had crossed paths in an unexpected way. He was the MBA student who talked his way out of every group project disaster, while I was the guy who actually fixed them. When he pitched me his consulting idea over cheap beer at a campus bar, I knew he needed someone who could turn his grand visions into actual deliverable results. 7 years later, I was questioning everything about that handshake agreement. Our partnership agreement had been drafted carefully back in 2017. Equal ownership, equal decision-making authority, comprehensive non-compete clauses. My wife Rebecca had insisted we include strong protective language about client lists and intellectual property. She'd worked in corporate law before becoming a teacher and understood how partnerships could go wrong. The first warning sign came 3 months earlier when Felix started questioning our revenue split. He argued that his client-facing work generated more direct income than my operational management. During our quarterly review in January, he'd suggested restructuring our compensation to reflect individual contributions. I'd dismissed his concerns as temporary frustration. Every partnership experiences tension. But looking back, that conversation marked the beginning of his exit strategy. By March, Felix's behavior had shifted noticeably. He scheduled client meetings without including me, claiming efficiency. He started working late, often alone in the office after everyone else had gone home. When I offered to help with his workload, he'd decline, saying he preferred handling certain accounts personally. Our IT specialist, Ryan Torres, mentioned something that should have alarmed me more than it did. Felix had been accessing client files outside his normal responsibilities, downloading contact information and contract details for accounts I managed. When Ryan brought this to my attention, I assumed Felix was preparing for a major presentation. Catherine Brooks, our accountant, noticed irregularities in Felix's expense reports. Unusual charges for office supplies, software licenses, and professional development courses. Nothing individually suspicious, but collectively suggesting preparation for something beyond our current operations. The most telling sign was Felix's relationship with Gregory Walsh, a former colleague who'd launched his own consulting practice 18 months earlier. They'd been meeting regularly for what Felix described as industry networking. I encouraged these connections, believing they could lead to collaborative opportunities. Thursday morning, Felix seemed unusually upbeat, almost relieved. He spent most of the day organizing his files, claiming he was implementing a new client management system. He stayed late again that night, and I remember thinking he was finally addressing the productivity concerns we'd discussed. Friday started normally. Felix arrived early, unusual for him, and spent the morning in his office with the door closed. Around noon, he emerged carrying a small cardboard box and his laptop bag. He stopped by my office with a resignation letter dated that day. The letter was brief, professional, citing irreconcilable differences about company direction and his desire to pursue independent opportunities. No advance notice, no transition plan, no acknowledgement of our 7-year partnership. As he prepared to leave, Felix looked directly at me and said, "You're a great operational manager, Daniel, but this business needs vision. I'm taking that vision where it can actually grow." His confidence was unsettling, like someone who'd already won a game I didn't know we were playing. That evening, as I sat in our empty office reviewing what had happened, my phone buzzed with his text message. The arrogance in those words, "Thanks for the education, but I'm taking the real business with me," crystallized everything I'd been missing about our partnership. Felix hadn't just quit. He'd been planning this departure for months, positioning himself to take our most valuable assets, our client relationships. I called Rebecca immediately. She listened to the entire story, then asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What protection do you have?" I pulled out our partnership agreement and read through the non-compete clause we'd negotiated 7 years earlier. The language was comprehensive, prohibiting either partner from soliciting our clients or employees for 24 months after departure. The penalty for violation was significant, 3 times the revenue lost to competitive activity. But Felix was smart. He wouldn't directly violate the non-compete. He'd find ways to circumvent it, using his personal relationships with clients to gradually transition their business to his new venture. Friday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Felix's confidence, his preparation, the way he'd been accessing files outside his normal scope. By morning, I'd made a decision that would prove crucial. I was going to document everything. Saturday morning, I drove to the office and began systematically reviewing our systems. Ryan Torres had installed comprehensive logging software 2 years earlier to monitor data security. Every file access, every download, every email was tracked and stored. What I found was staggering. Over the past 4 months, Felix had accessed client files for every major account we managed. He'd downloaded contact databases, contract summaries, pricing information, and strategic planning documents. The digital trail was comprehensive and damning. More importantly, I discovered he'd been forwarding client information to his personal email account, creating copies of proprietary data that belonged to Kane and Morrison Consulting. Catherine Brooks arrived Saturday afternoon to help with the forensic accounting. As our CPA, she had access to financial records that revealed Felix's preparation had extended beyond client theft. He'd been systematically transferring business expenses to his personal accounts, claiming reimbursements for equipment and services that were actually investments in his new venture. But the most damaging evidence came from our communication system. Felix had been using company email to coordinate with Gregory Walsh, discussing client transition strategies and employee recruitment plans. These emails, automatically archived by our IT system, documented a clear conspiracy to undermine Kane and Morrison, while Felix was still a partner. Sunday morning brought the first client defection. Amanda Foster from Phoenix Industries called my personal phone, apologizing but explaining that Felix had contacted her Saturday evening with a compelling presentation about his new firm's capabilities. She'd agreed to move their account to Morrison Strategic Solutions effective immediately. By Sunday afternoon, 3 more clients had called with similar news. Felix had spent the weekend executing a coordinated campaign, using inside knowledge of their projects and concerns to position his new firm as the perfect solution to their needs. I spent Sunday evening preparing my response. Not emotional retaliation, but methodical legal action based on the evidence I'd gathered. Felix had violated multiple aspects of our partnership agreement, and I had documentation proving every breach. Hit subscribe if you're hooked, because Felix's plan was about to backfire spectacularly. Monday morning at 7:30 a.m., I called Vincent Crawford, the attorney who'd helped draft our original partnership agreement. Vincent reviewed the evidence I'd compiled and confirmed what I'd suspected. Felix's actions constituted clear violations of our non-compete clause, theft of proprietary information, and breach of fiduciary duty. By 9 a.m., Vincent had filed for an emergency restraining order requiring Felix to return all client information and cease solicitation activities. The filing included detailed evidence of his systematic data theft in coordination with Gregory Walsh. At 10 a.m., Felix received official notice that his new business accounts were being frozen pending resolution of our legal action. The restraining order also prohibited him from contacting any Kane and Morrison clients or employees. That's when my phone started ringing. Felix's first call came at 10:47 a.m. Instead of his usual confidence, his voice carried panic. He claimed his actions were just standard competitive behavior, nothing more than what any departing partner might do. I let him talk, recording the conversation as Vincent had advised. Felix inadvertently confirmed several key points: his months of preparation, his coordination with Gregory Walsh, and his deliberate targeting of our most profitable clients. By noon, Felix had called 6 more times, each conversation more desperate than the last. The reality of his legal exposure was becoming clear. The 3 times revenue penalty for non-compete violations would apply to every client he'd improperly solicited, combined with damages for theft of proprietary information. His potential liability exceeded $2.3 million. Monday afternoon brought additional complications for Felix. Amanda Foster called to inform me that she was reconsidering her decision to switch firms. She'd learned that Felix had misrepresented his access to proprietary information about Phoenix Industries' strategic plans. Without that insider knowledge, his new firm couldn't deliver the customized solutions he'd promised. 2 other clients made similar calls, expressing concerns about Felix's business practices and questioning whether they wanted to work with someone who'd betrayed his business partner. By 4 p.m., Gregory Walsh had called requesting a meeting to discuss resolution. Felix's legal exposure was threatening their new partnership, and Gregory wanted to minimize his own liability. Monday evening brought the call I'd been expecting. Felix, no longer confident, now sobbing into his voicemail, begging me to find a way to resolve this situation without destroying his career. The desperation in his voice was unmistakable. The man who'd arrogantly claimed to be taking the real business with him was now facing the collapse of his new venture before it had truly begun. Tuesday morning, Vincent and I met with Felix and his attorney. The contrast from Friday's confidence was striking. Felix looked exhausted, defeated, confronted with evidence he couldn't deny or explain away. His attorney attempted to negotiate, claiming Felix's actions were misunderstood competitive behavior rather than deliberate theft. But the email evidence was too comprehensive, the digital trail too detailed. Vincent laid out our terms. Felix would return all client information, cease all solicitation activities, and pay damages equal to our actual losses plus legal fees. In exchange, we'd avoid pursuing criminal charges for theft of trade secrets. Felix had no choice but to accept. The alternative was financial ruin and potential criminal prosecution. Within 48 hours, Felix had contacted every client he'd solicited, explaining that he couldn't provide the services he'd promised and recommending they return to Kane and Morrison. His new partnership with Gregory Walsh dissolved immediately, leaving him unemployed and facing substantial legal debts. The resolution came exactly 1 week after Felix's departure. Our client relationships were restored, our proprietary information was returned, and Felix's competitive threat was neutralized. But the victory went beyond legal resolution. The crisis had revealed something important about our business relationships. Clients who might have been tempted by Felix's offers ultimately valued integrity and reliability over slick presentations and insider information. Catherine Brooks helped restructure our operations to function effectively without Felix's contributions. We promoted 2 junior consultants to senior roles and hired an experienced business development manager to handle client relationships. 6 months later, Kane Consulting was more profitable than Kane and Morrison had ever been. Without Felix's expensive tastes and questionable business practices, our overhead dropped significantly while our client satisfaction increased. I eventually learned that Felix's career never recovered from the scandal. Word spreads quickly in Austin's consulting community, and his reputation for betraying business partners made him unemployable at reputable firms. Gregory Walsh attempted to rebuild his practice independently, but struggled to attract clients concerned about his association with Felix's business practices. The most satisfying outcome was learning that Austin's consulting community had blacklisted Felix. Word travels fast when you betray a business partner, and professional integrity still mattered more than talent without ethics. A year later, Felix wrote asking for a reference for a Dallas position. My response was brief. I could confirm employment dates and responsibilities, nothing more about character or business practices. Today, Kane Consulting employs 32 people across 4 states. We built something sustainable based on trust rather than manipulation. Felix's text that Friday evening, "Thanks for the education, but I'm taking the real business with me," turned out prophetic in ways he never intended. He did provide an education, just not the kind he'd planned.